Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, the podcast.
Disclaimer. This episode is based on publicly available documents and reporting, as well as court documents, as of the 14th December 2025. A country lunch that broke the internet. On a winter Saturday in country Victoria, 4 adults sit down to a homemade lunch in a quiet town called Leongatha. Nothing about the invite looks unusual. It's family. It's a nice house. The main course is beef Wellington. Yum. A bit fancy for a small town, but hardly suspicious. Within a week, 3 of those people are dead. The 4th has been airlifted, put through the medical ringer, and somehow clinged on. The alleged weapon? Not a gun. Not a knife. A mushroom. Yes. Specifically, what toxicologists and fungi experts later tell the court is Amanita phalloides, the death cap mushroom, one of the most poisonous in the world. This is Australia. Usually when we argue about mushrooms, it's should they go on pizzas, not should they go in a Supreme Court murder trial. But in 2025, that is exactly what happens. So how did the case start? The people involved, the motive, and what the death cap mushroom actually does to your body. And that's what we're covering today. According to the Supreme Court of Victoria and trial reporting, the lunch took place on the 29th of July 2023 at the home of Erin Patterson in the town of Leongatha in South Gippsland. At the table were 4 guests, all related to her through marriage. Don Patterson, her former father-in-law, Gail Patterson, her former mother-in-law, Heather Wilkinson, Gail's sister, Ian Wilkinson, Heather's husband, a local pastor. Erin's estranged husband, Simon Patterson, had been invited but did not attend. And you'll find out why later on. Her 2 children were around that day, but according to evidence summarized in court, they did not eat the main course with the adults. They went to the movies instead. The main dish, as the Crown later describes it, was individual beef Wellingtons, steaks wrapped in pastry and a mushroom duxel, served with potato and vegetable. We now know the who, but what actually happened? And here we have to be very clear. This is about what the prosecution argued. According to Reuters and the Supreme Court summary, prosecutors said that this was not food poisoning gone wrong or some weird takeaway disaster. They told the jury this was a deliberate poisoning, rooted in ongoing family tensions and a pattern of deception, including a false story about Erin having cancer to manipulate sympathy and draw people closer. The law doesn't require the Crown to prove a detailed, crystal clear motive, they just have to prove intent. But they pointed to that claimed illness, to strained family relationships, and to earlier alleged incidents involving food and Erin's estranged husband. Those earlier accounts were later dropped as the backdrop. The defense, for their part, would eventually say this was a tragic accident, a mushroom mix-up by an amateur forager who then panicked and lied. So, from the beginning, the story splits into 2. The Crown says this was a targeted mushroom attack, and the defense says this was a catastrophic mistake. That I can agree. And the jury has an unenviable position of having to pick one of them. So, what was the initial defense, and how did it all fall apart? When people start dropping with catastrophic liver damage right after eating at your house, the health department calls you. Investigators from Victoria's Health Services and police talked to Erin in the days after the lunch. The version of the events they hear early on, as reported in ABC's trial coverage, sounds roughly like this. The mushrooms came from supermarkets and an Asian grocer. She was not a mushroom forager. She did not own a food dehydrator. Now, hold on to the last one for later. In short, I bought normal mushrooms like everybody else. I don't go wandering into the forest with a basket. The problem with that story is that it collides head-on with 2 sets of facts. In Victoria, public health advice in Victoria says death caps are not found in the normal commercial mushroom supply. They're wild, not framed for sale. Number 2. Evidence starts turning up that Erin has foraged mushrooms and does use a dehydrator. So the earlier "I just bought them at the shops" defense lasts right up until investigators check the tip. This is one of those moments where real life looks like a dark comedy writer got hold of a script. In crime shows, people toss guns off bridges. In this Australian case, though, it's a kitchen appliance at the dump. CCTV from the Coonawarra landfill shows Erin driving in on 2nd of August 2023, 4 days after the lunch, and dropping a Sunbeam food dehydrator into the e-waste area. Bank records confirm she paid a fee at the tip that day. Police go back, retrieve the dehydrator, and send it to the lab. At trial, Erin admits she lied in her early interviews about not foraging and not owning that dehydrator. She tells the court she lied because she was ashamed, panicked, and scared of being blamed. The story has changed. The question now is whether the jury believes the new version. Now let's look at the damning evidence. This is the part of the story that jurors spend weeks listening to: the science, the photos, and the digital crumbs. Let's hit the key pieces that courts and major outlets all highlighted. So the dehydrator is first up. The tip run, so to speak. Forensic experts test the inside of that Sunbeam dehydrator and find mushroom DNA that, according to the fungal specialist evidence, is a 99% match for death cap mushrooms. The Supreme Court summary notes that the jury accepted the prosecution's case that death cap mushrooms had been preserved in that dehydrator and then used in the meal. Small, grim side note: imagine having a job where you spend your days scraping goo out of a dump rescue dehydrator and going, "Yep, that's lethal fungus." Mycologists are really the unsung horror protagonists. The next evidence is the photos. Police also find photos on a device from the Patterson home. Mushrooms on a set of kitchen scales. Those images are shown in court to a fungi expert. His evidence, reported in ABC's coverage, is that the mushrooms in those photos are death caps, with a high degree of confidence. So now you've got death cap matching DNA in the dehydrator Erin dumped and death caps on scales in a kitchen, captured in photos tied to the household. If this were a cooking show, this is the part where the host says, "Here's one I prepared earlier," and everyone goes quiet. The medical and toxicology trail. Toxicologists and treating doctors testify that the 4 guests showed a pattern consistent with amatoxin poisoning, the signature toxins in death caps. According to those reports, Don Patterson receives a liver transplant but still dies from liver and multi-organ failure. My goodness. Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson also dies from liver failure complications within 6 days. Ian Wilkinson is in hospital for around 7 weeks and survives. Tests detect amatoxins consistent with death caps in at least some victim samples. Meanwhile, samples associated with Erin and her children do not show the same death cap toxins. The Crown leans hard on that asymmetry. 4 guests are poisoned, the cook is not. The kids are not. The toxins showed up in them, not in her. The defense, for their part, cross-examines the experts, pointing out limitations and timing issues in some of the tests, and reminding the jury that the science isn't always perfectly clean. But there is a bigger pattern. All of this sits on top of the earlier lies. Erin originally saying she never foraged and never owned a dehydrator, later accepting that yes, she did indeed forage, and yes, she did indeed own a dehydrator, particularly used for mushrooms. Prosecutors also tell the jury she falsely claimed to have cancer when in fact she was planning weight loss surgery, using the illness story to gain sympathy and explain medical appointments. So when jurors walk into the deliberation room, here's what's on the table: a family meal, 3 deaths and 1 near death from death cap poisoning, a dehydrator dumped at the tip with death cap DNA, photos of death caps on scales, inconsistent stories from Erin about mushrooms, medical issues, and equipment. The defense says tragic mix-up, then panic and lies. The prosecution says that's not panic, that's a cover-up. The sentence. What do you think if you were given this as evidence and you were one of the jurors. On the 7th of July 2025, after hearing all of that, a jury finds Erin Patterson guilty of 3 accounts of murder for Don, Gail, and Heather, 1 count of attempted murder for Ian. 2 months later, on the 8th of September 2025, she comes back for Justice Christopher Bealey for sentencing. But before I go into the guilty sentencing and the overall sentencing for Erin, I want to jump into the motivation that spurred all this. It's one thing to know what was done and how that person is to be treated after the fact. But what drives a person to do this? In the official record, the most haunting thing about this case isn't actually the mushrooms, or the tip run, or even the trial. It's the silence around why. Even at sentencing, Justice Christopher Bealey looked at Erin Patterson and said, in open court, only you know why you committed them. I will not be speculating about that. So, we're going to be doing what the judge wouldn't, carefully walk around the edges of motivation. Not to pretend we've solved it, but to explore the shape of whatever was sitting in her head that day. Again, purely conjecture and an opinion. So let's begin. First, by understanding what happens to your body when you consume a death cap mushroom. Then we'll explore the relationship with Erin and her ex-husband. So folded into a sauce, diced into a duxel, sliced on top of something comforting, you chew, you swallow, you drink your water or your wine, and for a while, absolutely nothing feels wrong. That's the first trick of a death cap mushroom. For the first hours, your body behaves like this was just dinner. Inside your stomach, the mushroom is breaking down, and with it, a family of tiny, vicious molecules called amatoxins. They are small, tough rings of amino acids that don't care about heat or cooking or stomach acid. Boil them, fry them, bake them into pastry, they survive. They slip through the wall of your gut, into your bloodstream, and catch a ride straight to the organ that waits at the end of nearly all digestive roads, your liver. Your liver is a quiet workhorse. It cleans your blood, manages your chemistry, keeps the entire system in balance without drama. The amatoxins arrive at its doorstep like polite guests, and they walk in with a can of petrol. They do something very precise. Inside liver cells, they block the machinery that makes new proteins. The little enzymes that turns DNA instructions into messenger RNA, and from there into thousands of proteins that keep a cell alive and able to repair itself. Cut that off, and the cell doesn't explode straight away. It just can't fix anything anymore. It starts dying from the inside out. All of this is happening quietly, molecule by molecule, as you wash the meal down and maybe compliment the cook. You feel nothing. Several hours later, the storm announces itself. It starts like a bad joke your body is telling at your expense. Twisting, cramping pain in your gut. Nausea that climbs up from somewhere low and deep. Then vomiting again and again until it feels like your insides are trying to leave. The other end joins in. Profuse, watery diarrhea. The kind that strips fluids and electrolytes out of you so fast you can feel yourself drying out. Sweat, chills, stomach cramps like someone's wringing your intestines out like a towel. If you stumble into an emergency department at this point, you look like 100 other cases. Maybe food poisoning, maybe a viral gastrobug, maybe something you ate. No glowing green aura, no obvious clue that this is anything more than a savage but ordinary tummy illness. But while your gut is throwing its tantrum, the deeper story is in the blood. The amatoxins are still hammering the liver. Cell after cell is losing its ability to repair damage, to process toxins, to make the proteins that keep your blood from leaking and your chemistry from swinging wildly out of range. It's like a city where all the maintenance crews have just been fired. At first, nothing looks different from the outside, but the cracks are already forming. This early storm can last a day. You're miserable, exhausted, hugging toilets and drip stands, but your mind is in the same place where most people would be. This is horrible, but it'll pass. And then, in a way, it does. One of the cruelest things about death cap poisoning is the false dawn. After the vicious first act, the vomiting eases, the diarrhea slows, the cramps let go. You can keep down some water, maybe a little food. Nurses say you're looking better. You might even sit up, scroll your phone, tell someone, I think I'm coming good now. From the outside, it looks like recovery. On the inside, it's the eye of the storm. Your liver has been taking a beating. A significant number of its cells are either dead or failing. The organ is still there, but its ability to do its job is collapsing. It can't clean the blood properly. It can't control clotting. It can't stop toxins from building up. The bloodstream, usually a carefully curated river, starts turning into a chemical swamp. There is no pain receptor for your liver is dying. You don't feel the moment the balance tips. You just float in this uneasy quiet, thinking the worst is over. This, unfortunately, is the second trick, the illusion of safety. Then, a day or two later, the real horror steps out from behind the curtain. Maybe you notice first in the mirror. The whites of your eyes aren't white anymore. There's a yellow cast creeping in, a sickly glow that wasn't there before. Your skin, too, takes on that bilious stain. This is jaundice. Bilirubin and other byproducts your liver usually clears away are now collecting in your tissues, turning you the color of an old bruise. You feel wrong in a deeper way now. The tiredness isn't just I've been sick, it's a heavy, poisoned exhaustion. Like your limbs are full of wet sand. Bruises appear in places you don't remember bumping. You bleed a little longer when the nurse takes blood. Your belly might ache dully under the right rib as the liver swells. Inside your skull, another change is starting. The blood that's now full of substances your liver would normally neutralize is washing through your brain. Thoughts get slower, you might feel foggy, irritable, or strangely detached. Words come out wrong. The world tilts sideways, not with dizziness, but with a kind of mental static. Doctors have a phrase for this: hepatic encephalopathy. Your brain drunk on the toxins your liver can't deal with anymore. By now, if anyone has connected the dots, the mushroom meal, the delayed onset, the false recovery, the crashing liver, you're in intensive care, and the team is in full battle mode. Bags of fluid hang like lanterns over your bed. Machines watch your heart, your oxygen, your blood pressure. Blood tests are coming back with numbers that make doctors swear under their breath. Sometimes medication and time can pull you back from this edge. In other cases, the verdict is brutal. Your liver is too damaged to recover. The only way out is a transplant, a race against time to find a donor and replace the entire failing organ before the rest of your body follows it over the cliff. Without that, the progression is grimly predictable. Your blood won't clot, so you bruise and bleed. Your kidney downstream from all this chaos begin to fail. Your blood pressure drops, you slip further into confusion, then into a coma. The body that handled that one meal so casually days ago is now unraveling system by system, all from a mushroom that didn't taste especially strange. If this were fiction, there'd be a tidy moral about not wandering into the woods and eating things you don't recognize. In reality, the moral is sharper and less poetic. Death caps are not a bad mushroom. They are a biochemical trap. They let you sit back from the table thinking nothing of it. They hurt you first in a way that looks ordinary. They show you a false sunrise and then they test how much machinery you can lose before your body cannot fight its way back. For some people caught early in the right hospital with aggressive treatment, the story ends in survival and a liver that slowly regenerates enough to keep going. For others, the last normal moment in their life is the sound of a fork on a plate and the thought, this tastes pretty good. So we know how the body reacts now to a death cap mushroom. Let's explore the relationship with Erin and her family and her ex-husband, just to get a better understanding of the motivation surrounding this case. 8 months before the launch, in December 2022, Erin is not venting calmly over a cup of tea. Police pull Facebook messages from her phone and tablet. In those messages, sent to an online friends group, she's talking about her estranged husband, Simon, and his parents, the same parents who will later die, at her table. The court hears lines like, "This family, I swear to effing God. At least I know they're a lost cause. I'm sick of this shit. I want nothing to do with them." His mum was horrified I had claimed child support. Why isn't she horrified her son is such a deadbeat? This is not a mild annoyance. This is white-hot resentment, typed out in real time during a child support fight and shown to the jury later. At the same time, other witnesses describe Don and Gail as wonderful, active grandparents, and even the defense points to an 18-year history of the in-laws being supportive to Erin and the kids. So you've got this weird split. In public and in witness boxes, they were good to me. They loved the kids, and I loved them. In private online chats, lost cause. I want nothing to do with them. F them. One face for the outside world, one face in the group chat. The prosecution literally calls it having two faces. The loving daughter-in-law mask and the angry, bitter one underneath. Erin denies that. She says she was just venting in a bad moment. But if you're looking for raw emotional fuel that could sit behind a crime like this, those messages are one of the few things we actually have. Now add the lie that prosecutors say turned from background drama into something sinister. When everyone sat down to lunch on that July day, survivor Ian Wilkinson told the court that Erin claimed she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Later, digital evidence shows she'd been searching online for serious cancer information beforehand. Stage 4 ovarian cancer, brain lymphoma, stage 4A cancer. At trial, she admits she did not have cancer. She says she used the story as a cover for something she found embarrassing, upcoming weight loss treatment, and what she only implied rather than flat out said she might need cancer treatment. The prosecutor, Nanette Rogers SC, calls this the first big deception and tells the jury Erin planted the seed of this lie far in advance, researched the cancer types to make it sound more convincing, and told this story at the lunch knowing, in the Crown's words, that her lie would die with them. Seen one way, the cancer story is just a manipulation to save face about weight loss surgery. Seen the way the prosecution frames it, it's an emotional lure, a way to give the lunch a heavy, family meeting feeling, and making sure people show up, then never live long enough to repeat the lie. Either way, it shows something important about her relationship to truth. She's willing to wrap big emotions, illness, fear, sympathy around a lie if it helps her solve a problem. That's not the same as a motive for murder, but it's a big hint about her comfort with deception. And it sits right next to the lunch on the timeline. Let's look at the next layer, layer 3, money and control. Those December messages aren't just "my in-laws annoy me," they're anchored in a specific fight: child support. Erin tells her online friend she's furious that Simon wanted her to withdraw a claim and that his parents weren't backing her the way she expected. You can picture the dynamic. Simon and Erin have separated. There are fresh arguments about who pays what. She expected his parents to be on her side. She feels they're not, and she's furious enough to call them a lost cause and a deadbeat family to her friends. It's very human, very messy. It does not automatically equal murderous, though. Just really, really pissed off. The defense grabs this and flips it. In their closing address, defense barrister Colin Mandy SC basically says to the jury, look, at 18 years of history, these in-laws were wonderful grandparents, and Erin was a devoted mother. If anything, she had a motive to keep these people in her world so they could keep supporting her and her children. That's actually a powerful point. If you kill the people who look after your kids, you don't just hurt them, you hurt yourself, your support network, your babysitting, your emotional backup, gone. So on one side you had the resentment and child support rage, on the other you have years of practical dependence and good memories. If you're looking for a neat TV style motive, she did it for the will, you're not going to find it with this case. What you get instead is something much more human and much less tidy, a stew of anger, pride, shame, financial stress, and family politics. And human beings absolutely have killed for less. If you assume for a moment that the jury got it right, that she did deliberately poison those Wellingtons, then the motive, whatever it was, had enough gravity to drag her through a chain of very controlled actions. And here's some more interesting tidbits of information surrounding the evidence, actually. She was looking up death cap mushroom locations on iNaturalist before the lunch. She had photos of those dehydrated mushrooms. There's DNA in the dehydrator. She gave multiple conflicting accounts from where the mushrooms came from, where the prosecutor repeated over and over again that finding these mushrooms in the supermarkets or Asian grocer was complete fiction, and a phone linked to her was factory reset 3 times in the week after the lunch, including once after it had been handed to the police. Taken together, that looks less like panic flailing and more like someone trying to keep control of a narrative even as everything collapses. And now let's zoom out a bit to nearly 20-year-old story of Erin and Simon Patterson. How they met, loved, separated, kept orbiting each other, fought over money, faith, and finally trust. You don't get a clean courtroom-ready motive, but you do get a very complicated emotional landscape that might shed some light on what the possible motives could be. So Erin and Simon met in 2004 while working at Monash City Council. They started dating the next year, got engaged in 2007, and married that same year. They had 2 kids, moved around for work, and eventually settled in regional Victoria. The relationship wasn't perfect. There were periods where she left and they separated temporarily, but the final permanent separation came in 2015 when Erin bought her own house and moved out. Here's how this relates to motive though. Even after the separation, both Simon and Eric told the court that for years they had what Simon called a chatty relationship. They co-parented well, Bill went on family holidays and could talk easily. So this is not a classic divorce from hell situation right away. For a long time, this is 2 exes who are, surprisingly, functional. That starts to change around 2021-2022, and 2 things hit roughly the same period. 1, Simon's mysterious illness, more on that in a minute, and 2, a child support/money dispute that absolutely detonates the emotional tone between them. By late 2022, Simon told the court the chatty vibe had vanished. Contact became functional and sometimes nothing. So from a narrative point of view, you've got a long, complicated ex-marriage that only really curdles in the couple of years right before the fatal lunch. One motive-adjacent theme that keeps coming up is money. Erin received a substantial inheritance of about $2 million from her grandmother in the mid-2000s. That is no measly sum. Part of that money was used to provide large interest-free loans to Simon's siblings. One Guardian live report cites about $400,000 lent to one sibling, with repayments continuing even after Erin and Simon separated. So from her perspective, she's the only one who brings serious capital into this family, and that capital helps his side of the family buy homes and build lives. Fast forward to 2022. For the first time, Simon lists himself as single on his tax return, which triggers a formal child support assessment rather than the more informal payment arrangement they've been using. Child support authorities advise him to stop paying extra expenses like school fees directly and wait for the official assessment, something he later tells the court he did on advice. Erin is furious. We know that not because we're guessing, but because of the Facebook messages the jury heard of in May 2025. And in those messages, she further complains that she had to carry too much financial weight. His parents don't back her on the child support dispute, and she feels they're more worried about not wanting to feel uncomfortable than about their son doing the right thing. One long-form analysis drawn on the trial's evidence adds more context that Erin believed child support authorities initially decided Simon would only have to pay $38 a month, and that she felt doubly betrayed because she had given his family so much interest-free in the past. Whether or not every dollar figure there ends up in the official record, the shape of her emotion is clear from the primary texts. I don't need anything from any of these people. I want nothing to do with them. Deadbeat. At the same time, there's faith and religion just bubbling in the background. Simon is a committed Christian, of which Erin is described by one of her friends as an atheist. A witness had told the court that Erin had used the words coercive and controlling about Simon in the context of religious schooling and decisions about their children's education. So, if you lay this narratively, she brings money into the family, that money helps his side of the family. Years later, she feels financially cornered, undersupported, and judged. And furthermore, his parents don't support her during the child support fight, as they state that we don't want to get involved, how about we pray about it, which makes things worse. Speculation hat on for a second, you can see how that might feel to someone in her shoes, less like godly neutrality and more like a polite way of choosing sides against her, especially if she already feels used for her money and unheard in the marriage. Not a neat motive, but a very potent grudge cocktail. This is the part though in the story where the jury in the mushroom trial didn't hear, but we now know from later reporting and court documents. Police had separately charged Erin with 3 counts of attempted murder over Simon's early mysterious illness in 2021 and 2022, charges that were dropped before the mushroom trial started. The ABC and other outlets, once suppression orders lifted, reported the allegations outlined in police briefs and pre-trial evidence. November 2021, Simon eats penne bolognese she had prepared and ends up in hospital with vomiting and diarrhea. May 2022, Haukwa camping trip. He eats chicken korma curry she cooked, later collapses, and winds up in a coma needing life-saving surgery and weeks of rehab. September 2022, after a vegetable wrap, he became seriously unwell. A medical expert engaged by prosecutors told a later court that one of Simon's episodes was consistent with barium carbonate poisoning. Barium carbonate being used in, guess what? Some rat poisons. But no definitive cause was found. Important legal line. Erin denies trying to poison Simon. Those attempted murder charges were dropped. She was not convicted of anything in relation to those incidents. But emotionally, for motive, we look at what it did to him. Simon told a pre-trial hearing that by early 2023, he had come to believe Erin was trying to kill him. He told his doctor and family members this, and he stopped eating food she prepared. When she invited him to the mushroom lunch, he declined the night before. So by the time we got the 29th of July 2023, their relationship isn't just strained, it's legally separated, financially adversarial, spiritually divided, and laced with Simon's private conviction that his ex-wife is dangerous enough that he won't touch her food. And I mean, how do you get super ill off a veggie wrap? Speculation? If you imagine being Erin in that dynamic, having your ex tell others he thinks you're trying to kill him, you can see how that might mix humiliation, anger, and a sense of being cast as the villain in his family. Again, no proof of motive, but more emotional accelerant. Let's have a look at the last messages before the lunch. Now up to here, everything is drawn from court evidence and reputable reporting. Now I'm going to step into interpretation mode. We explore what might have been going on in their head. As long as, we take it with a pinch of salt, purely conjecture and speculation. One plausible narrative arc, not proven but consistent with the record, might sound like this. Erin spends years as part of the Patterson family, not just by marriage but emotionally and financially. She loans big chunks of her inheritance to Simon's siblings. His parents help her with the kids. Ian's sermons help draw her into church community. Over time, the marriage becomes strained. There are separations, she leaves and comes back. Finally, in 2015, she moves out for good. But for years, they maintain that oddly warm, chatty co-parenting relationship. Then, from 2021 onwards, everything seems to start tilting. Simon's mysterious illnesses, hospital stays, and a coma, and his growing belief that she is dangerous. Then the 2022 bombshell, he's officially single on paper, and child support becomes a formal adversarial process. When she goes to his parents, people she once saw as allies looking for support in that fight won't intervene. They suggest prayer and withdrawal of her claim instead. She experiences that as them choosing him and their comfort over her and her kids. Now in her private chats, she's not just annoyed. She's talking about them as a lost cause, wanting nothing to do with them, calling Simon a deadbeat and venting that she's sick of it all. If you assume, as the jury did, that she then deliberately served a poisoned lunch and that she lied about the cancer diagnosis to set the scene, then you're left with the question, was this about money, control, revenge, some twisted attempt to solve multiple problems at once? Some theories that people like journalists, commenters, redditors, etc. kick around, again, these are theories, not proven facts, include revenge on Simon by proxy. If he won't eat her food and believes she's dangerous, then targeting his emotional core, his parents and aunt and uncle, could be seen as a way of striking at him without him in the room. This lines up with the fact that he was invited but declined and she went ahead anyway. That's what I thought as well. If she really wanted him dead, then she would have postponed it to have him actually there and have him eat the food as well. So that one sort of confused me. A rage explosion over feeling used and discarded. The combination of I gave your family my inheritance, you're barely paying child support, and your parents won't back me, appears repeatedly in long-form analysis and online discussion as a psychological trigger, even if it's not a legal motive. And lastly, control and narrative management gone nuclear. Her history at work and in family life includes repeated small lies, manipulation, and a need to control how others see her. Colleagues from early in her life described her as a habitual liar who would say almost anything to get away with things. The cancer lie at the lunch, the shifting mushroom sauces stories, and the multiple factory resets on her phone all echo that patterns of trying to bend reality to fit the story she needs others to believe. You can even go as far as to say if the jury was right, this wasn't a heat-of-the-moment snap. It was a slow build of resentment over money, religion, respect, in a woman who, according to many who knew her, was very comfortable lying to get what she wanted. Then at some point, she stopped just rewriting the story and rewrote who got to be in it at all. But you can always bring it back to the fact that none of that was proven as a specific motive. The prosecution did not say she killed for money or she killed for inheritance. They explicitly told the jury they were not alleging a motive, only intent. And Justice Bealey, at sentence, said the quiet part out loud. Only you know why you committed them. I will not be speculating about that. So you've just heard one of the strangest, ugliest intersections of two very normal things. Family lunch, a slow, invisible poison. We know what happened. A jury decided that a woman cooked a meal that killed 3 relatives and almost killed a 4th. We know how it happened, death cap mushrooms, carefully prepared, hidden in something fancy and comforting like beef Wellington. What we still don't really know is why. And that's the part that sticks, long after all the legal jargon fades. Because behind the court transcripts and news headlines, you have something a lot more familiar. A long, messy relationship between two people who once loved each other. Years of shared money, shared kids, shared in-laws, faith differences, child support fights, feeling used, feeling unheard, feeling judged, and private messages where someone who says, I love my in-laws, also vents, I want nothing to do with them. For most of us, those things end in awkward Christmases and muting the family WhatsApp chat. In this story, if the jury's right, it ended in a table set for 4 and a dish that never gave anyone a chance. So as you close this case, I want to leave you with some questions. Not about the law, but about us. How well do we ever really know the people at our table? Is it possible for someone to play their dutiful daughter-in-law on the outside and be raging in private, and nobody around them truly see it? What do you think is worse? A murder with a clear motive, or one with a motive never really comes out? Is she did it for the money actually easier to live with than we honestly have no idea why? Where's the line between venting and danger? We all say awful things in private sometimes about family, bosses, exes. At what point would you start to worry that someone's ranting isn't just blowing off steam? If you were on that jury, would the lack of a clear motive bother you? Would you be able to say guilty on the strength of the physical evidence alone, even when the why stays a black box? And lastly, possibly the most uncomfortable question, if you felt as cornered and resentful as Erin clearly did at times, what would you do with those feelings? Would you pull back, get help, cut ties? Or would you, like so many people in messy families, just keep showing up to lunch and hoping it somehow fixes itself? Because that's the real horror of this story, not just that 3 people died after a mushroom lunch, but that right up until that day, this could have been anyone's complicated family drama. Same ingredients, divorce, money, in-laws, religion, pride. 99 times out of 100, it ends with a slammed door and an awkward group text. This time, it ended up in the Supreme Court. Thank you for listening to this one. Take a breath. Maybe hug someone you actually like. If you were sitting in the jury box, what would your verdict be? And what do you think the motive really was? Let me know in the comments below. If you like what I do and think this Australian silly sausage covering true crime deserves my support, then visit my Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/SFGT for stories, fables, ghostly tales. Thank you for listening. If you have any time in your day to leave an iTunes review or leave a review on Spotify, that puts me in front of lovelies like yourself. If you have any questions to ask me or want to reach out to me for any reason, you can email me directly at storiesfablesghostlytales@gmail.com, where I read every comment or email posted. Now I want to thank my amazing Patreons that support me already. First up is my majestic and brilliant Ode Night Tea Titan. Matto, I keep thinking about how you would handle a case like this. While the rest of us are stuck on the horror, you'd be looking at the structure of it, the way the story is built, like one of those Baroque cathedrals you love. You'd see every twisted little detail as part of a larger design. The family, the house, the lies, the timeline. That's your energy, mate. So Matto, I hope your week is full of soaring arches, beautiful melodies, and cases that you can analyze from a safe, comfortable distance with a very good cup of tea in mind. Thank you, my Ode Night Tea Titan, for bringing that thoughtful, big-picture brain to a show full of messy human stories. If anyone could treat this case with grace, nuance, and care, it would be you, Matto. Thank you so much for your friendship, your support, and being jaw-droppingly amazing as always. Are you a fan of vegetarian Wellingtons? Will you ever look at a mushroom Wellington again in the same light, Matto? I'm keen to know. Alright, buddy, I'll be in touch soon as well. Thank you so much again, legend. And now I want to thank my 3 white tea warlords.
White tea warlords!
That keep this show pumping along. I am lucky to have Lesosaurus Rex, aka Jim Howard Warlord. If you had this case dropped in your lap, you'd treat it like leg day, controlled, grounded, and absolutely no skipping the hard reps. You'd carry the weight of the facts, not the gossip, and walk it out one careful step at a time. Thanks for being the one who'd handle a story like this with strength and discipline, not just outrage. Have a kick-ass gym sesh, Leza, and thank you as always for being your majestically brilliant self. Have a great week, legend, and thanks for your support. And my next white tea warlord, Maya, the queen of cats. I know exactly how you treat this case. You'd give the humans one look of quiet judgment, curl up with your feline court, and focus on the empathy for the victims, for the families, even for the absolute mess of human emotion behind it all. You're the one who'd remind everyone that behind the headlines are real people who needed kindness. Thank you so much, Maya, for your support and for being your awesome self. Have a great week ahead. And my last white tea warlord, Sangeetha the Seer. You just sit with this case the way you always do, not just staring at what happened, but gently asking what we're supposed to learn from it. You're the one who looked past the shock and into patterns, how trust breaks, how lies grow, how we might catch the next disaster sooner. Thank you for being the quiet, wise lens this show desperately needs when the stories get dark. Thank you so much, legend, and have a brilliant week ahead of yourself. And finally, to my Earl Grey enforcers and all tiers thereafter, I am lucky to have Chad Warren, Peter Raffaelli, Just Heather, Juicebox Andy, Divided by Zero, Paige Kramer, Seductive Smiles, Jane Gumnick, and Michael Krupp. Thank you all for your amazing support. And so, my lovely listeners, that's where we leave tonight's case. We step away from the evidence, the timelines, and the courtroom and back into our own lives, where family lunches are just lunches, and the only thing lurking in the kitchen is an overboiled kettle. Thank you for walking through this true crime story with me, for giving the victims your time, attention, and respect. These aren't just cases, they're real people, real families, and real futures that never got to happen. For now, this is your tale teller from Stories, Fables, Ghostly Tales, True Crime signing off. May your doors be locked, your instincts sharp, and your curiosity tempered with compassion. Stay safe, be kind, and as always, until next we meet.
Under oak and outer bone, where the damned keep secrets on. Moonlight milks the forest floor. Teeth of white say just one more. Pretty learns how to scream. Knife goes down, a warning cry. Flesh so calm it feels like a lie. Taste of earth and bitter cream. Death dressed up as ill rather than dream. Liver counting borrowed time. Hourglass leaking. Thank you for listening, you amazing listeners. I want to thank my out-night tea titan Matto Star, the most amazing supporter and special pal of mine. May your days be full of joy. And a huge thank you to my white tea warlords and friends of mine. Lezathor is my gym genius, Maya my queen of cats, and Sangeetha, the seer that sees all. And to all my Earl Grey enforcers and tears, thereafter all my love to you all. See you soon.